Welcome to Chronic Health. I'm your host, Ryan Lovelace, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about how many meals you should be eating each and every day. So, to start off, one thing we got to talk about is insulin. So, insulin is a hormone produced by the pancreas that's responsible for the metabolism of carbs, proteins, and fats. It's literally responsible for taking in what you eat, taking that glucose that then enters your bloodstream from the food being broken down into your body and takes that glucose and puts it in the cell so the cell can then use it. And then whatever cells that need that energy at the time, insulin can be the ones to basically put it in there, and then your cells can go and do what they need to do. And so think if your cells don't get that energy, then your body basically breaks down from a lack of energy, a lack of the fuel that it needs to do what it needs to do. I mean, think how far is your car going to run if you never put fuel in it? Not very far. Your body is the exact same way. If you don't give it the fuel it needs, it won't run as properly as it needs to. Insulin is a vital component in doing just that, keeping your body going and properly breaking down and using the energy you get from the food you're consuming. So insulin is super important in the natural process of metabolism, which is the breaking down of the food you consume, building it back up into the various uses it needs, and either storing it for later or using it right away. So whenever we talk about meal frequency or how many meals you should be eating, keep in mind that whenever you eat, you experience a spike in insulin. Now, don't be afraid. Your body does that naturally. It naturally has to do that because you eat the food, it breaks it down into glucose, which is just sugar, enters the bloodstream, and when your body senses that there's a larger amount of sugar in the blood, insulin's then released to take that sugar and allocate it where it needs to go, wherever it might need to go. So this is a natural process that your body does. So don't be concerned about that. What you do need to think about is if you perpetually have spikes in insulin. Now, what I mean by perpetually have it is if you're constantly eating or you eat a large amount of trans fats, fried foods, potato chips, candy, you're going to have a very high spike in insulin and a consistently high spike in insulin because there's so much sugar in those types of things. It's almost too much for your body to handle, and your cells can only handle so much at one time. If insulin comes, takes some of that sugar and tries to give it to a cell, but that cell's like, hey man, I'm already processing some sugar you gave me 30, 40 minutes ago. I can't handle no more. So then what's it going to do? It's going to get then stored as fat. So remember, high insulin, high fat storage. Now, on the flip side, if your insulin goes low, if you have a dip in insulin, so that means that you have a dip in fat storage, which then that means, it basically means that since fat isn't being stored, it's being burned. So right away, whenever you think a dip in insulin, you think fat burning, you automatically think, okay, if I need to have more dips in my insulin, that means I need to eat less, right? Well, not necessarily. Now, it is true that the less you eat, if you eat, one, two, or even three meals a day, yes, it's true that you'll have higher spikes in insulin as opposed to eating more meals. But if you have higher spikes, that means you'll have lower valleys. So you'll have more fat storage, but also more fat burning. Now, on the flip side, if you eat more meals, so more meals a day, even if you consume a higher level of carbs or sugars, you won't have as much of a spike in insulin. The more meals you eat, the more your insulin is regulated and the less, spikes and valleys you have. Now, what we just said, the higher insulin, high fat storage. So if your insulin doesn't spike as much, fat doesn't get stored as much, but also fat's not burned as much. So either way, it seems like, you know, it doesn't really make sense because it's on the surface, it seems like I should eat less meals so that way I have more fat burning. But then you could also make an argument that I should eat more meals because I have less fat storing. Now, the current literature that's out there and the current studies that have been done are inconclusive in their results. If you take a single study, you could say, oh, look at this. It says waist circumference was reduced most in less meals. But then on the flip side, you could look at another one and say, no, 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 the most fat loss was experienced in the higher meals. But the cool thing about that is about it, the research being inconclusive is because it takes the pressure off of you onto thinking, okay, what's the perfect number of meals I got to eat? And then you don't have to do a bunch of research. You don't have to try and make sense of, research papers. Because I don't know if you read them, but there's a lot of words in there and they can be tough to decipher. But it takes the pressure off of you to have to find that stuff out. And then you get the freedom of thinking, okay, what works best for me? What works best for my lifestyle? If you have a very busy, hectic lifestyle, you might say, man, 2 meals a day would be perfect for me. So that means you take all your calories, only have 2 meals a day, and then of course, that's what they would call intermittent fasting, or living like a fasting lifestyle, is only eating 1-2 meals a day, maybe 3, but it's usually, if you're talking about fasting, it's usually like 2 meals a day, or getting all your meals in a certain 6-8 hour window throughout the day, and then outside of that window you don't eat at all. So then that frees you up to think, what works best for me? If you have, so if you're like me, you wake up at the same time every day, you leave for work at the same time, your breaks are at the same time, well, I kind of clock out at various times, but if your life is very regimented, or your week is very regimented, that way hey, it's 3 o'clock, I know Jim's clocking out of work. It's like clockwork. You know what time you're going in, you know what time you're going off, you know what time you got to pick the kids up. Something like that, 4, 5, and 6 meals is going to be a lot easier, because you know when you can make time, you know when you can't make time, and then you can get those more frequent meals, if you want, in much more easily. Now keep in mind, if you eat less meals, even though you're getting the same amount of calories, you're going to experience a lot more periods of hunger, because you're not going to be eating as regularly, and you're going to be feeling that sensation of hunger a lot more frequently. Now, me personally, I like more meals. 4 meals a day is perfect for me. I have a breakfast, I have a lunch, I have basically a snack between lunch and dinner, and then I have dinner. So then for me, 4 meals works great, and I use that 4 meal eating plan. And when I was doing that, I lost 40 pounds. Now, keep in mind, no matter how much or how many times a day you eat, it's more important on what you eat rather than when you eat. What you eat is going to be 80% of getting the body that you want. If you want to lose weight, it's going to be more important on what you eat than when you eat. Keep in mind, you cannot outwork a bad diet. If you want to try, be my guest, but you cannot outwork a bad diet. I would love to be able to say you can eat whatever you want, do an 8-hour workout, once every 2 weeks, and then you'll be good. No. Your body doesn't work that way. It works more off of, and it does more with what you eat than what you do. So number one, focus on what I'm eating rather than how much I'm eating. And then number two, think, like I just said, think about what would work best for my lifestyle. You better than I know you. So think about, what does my week look like? What does my weekend look like? And do what's best for you. Number three, your body works best on consistency. Think about, what can I consistently do? Don't try to cut everything cold turkey. I'm going to eat 1,500 calories, spread that over, 5 meals, and then be good. No. Start small. Think about, what could I actually do? Don't think, what could I do for the next 30 days? Think, what could I do for the next year? Because if you can get into a habit of consistently doing what's good, not only will you lose weight, but you'll keep the weight off. And then you won't go through yo-yo periods of losing weight, gaining weight, losing weight, gaining weight, and then just cycling through the same 15 pounds and going through the same cycle over and over and over again. Because if you're consistent, then you'll lose those 15 pounds and you'll keep those 15 pounds off, because you're not mentally getting in the habit of just doing something for the next 30 days. You're getting in the habit of, what can I do for the next 360 days? What can I do for the next year? Because if you can consistently find out, what can I consistently do that's good? Number one, your body responds most to consistency. And if you can find something good you can consistently do, then you'll lose the weight and you'll keep the weight off. And then it won't be this pattern of going to the extreme, losing 20 pounds for 30 days, and then gain that 20 pounds back in the next week or two after you're done. Because you mentally get in the habit of, what can I keep doing, rather than what can I just suffer through for the next 30 days. So think about, what can you consistently do? If you can get in the habit of thinking, what can I consistently do, or what could I do long term, not just with what you're eating, but also like exercise what you're doing. For me, I made a video about how I lost 40 pounds, and the only 2 things I did was I ate more good than bad, and I went walking 3 days a week. That's it. I sat down and thought, what could I actually do? I said, well, I know I'll actually go walking. I love going walking. So I would go walking for 30 minutes to an hour 3 times a week. And I knew I would consistently do that. And over the next, few months, from eating more good than bad and going walking 3 times a week, I lost 40 pounds. Why? Because I consistently did it. From the day to day, it didn't do that much. But like I said, your body responds best to consistency. So if you're consistently doing a little bit good every day, that little bit of good will then equal up to a lot of bit of good. Like I said, what can you do for the next year? Because on January 1st, let's just say you start, by December 31st, you can look back and say like, oh man, each day, was a little bit of progress. But over the next year, it equaled up to a lot of progress. And like I said, a lot of progress that you can consistently stick with. You're not yo-yoing between 20 pounds lost, 20 pounds gain, lost, gain, lost, gain. You're consistently losing the weight. Now, this is not a formula to a quick solution, but it is a formula to a long-lasting solution. And that's what you want. That's what building a life of chronic health is all about. That's why I named this channel Chronic Health, so that you have reoccurring health by giving you tools of what you can consistently do. And if you can consistently do something, that's what's going to lead to the results for a lifetime. Thank you for tuning into my channel today. If this video helped you out or you learned something new, let me know all about it in the comments below. I post videos every Tuesday morning. If you want to know right when my videos go up, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon. Remember, what you think, what you eat, and what you do will all lead to a life of chronic health. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.